Good. AJMahari here. Quiet told Dante, Red Fox, Labrador Retriever, purebred. Hey, CKC registered, but the breeder hasn't sent the papers yet, just saying. And Grace is trying to put, no, Grace. Oh, yeah, Grace is jealous. Anyway, I'm here to do another comment response, and guess what? 2 more comment responses to the same commenter that I spent 2 hours and 5 minutes in the actual recording of the podcast that just went up early this morning, like just after midnight or whatever, about the cognitive dissonance and if you're weeing into the wind, after these BPD breakups. Well, I hope this is going to help someone, because clearly it doesn't seem like it's going to help the commenter. So don't know what that's about. Dawn, you going to stay with me? You're going to drive her crazy. Grace, off you go. Don't hit that. Yes, Grace, I see you too. Okay, guys. Grace, go on. You get a point. The jealousy between, well, it's mostly Grace is very jealous. So on that podcast I did all about this commenter's comments, plethora of them, and there's still a plethora of them here, there, and more being added to. Well, the commenter, there's, hey, no biting. Dogs. Aren't they lovely and wonderful? Except when you're trying to do a video. Guys, no. Grace. Bop, 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 bop. Goof. Yes, you too. Kisses for both. And Toby's waiting, okay? Toby's in his crate, actually, though. Because he knocks everything over. He's a Rottweiler with a big, strong head. Anyway, that's not what you tuned in for, is it? No, not at all. And have a Roddy on my shirt. Wow. Okay, off you go. Go on now. Go on. Off. Go find something to do that doesn't squeak, okay? Play with something that doesn't squeak. They're going to bite each other now, actually. In dog play or fight, I'm not sure which. If it gets loud, we'll know it's a fight. Guys, not around my little tray here, okay? Hey, I have the phone going off in the other room. Never mind, right? Oh yes. And things popping up on my phone. I'm just trying to do a video. I'm just skipping around. Shouldn't be. So, on the podcast that went up earlier, like October 3rd, that's today, BPD discard, codependent fantasy, pissing into the wind of cognitive dissonance. The same commenter replied twice on this, if I can find them. Yes, okay. He likes to comment, and then he likes to reply to himself ad infinitum. Okay, right? The commenter is surf, read, jump, sleep. So the first comment to the podcast of all of his comments, and what I was trying to be educative about, and for anybody that relates, not necessarily just a commenter, he begins with, I have to defend myself here. That's not a healthy beginning. It's not a healthy approach, because why does he have to defend himself? Well, because he's stuck in thought loops, and he's still in denial, and I don't know why else. So I have to defend myself here. And why? Because the commenter says, I still do not see myself as a codependent. Okay. I mean, I'm not trying to gaslight the guy. I can't say, oh, yes, you are. But his comments, everything he said, and what I went through in the whole podcast, 2 hours long, etc., which takes 4 to 5 hours to edit, just saying. I think he's a codependent. And that's just my opinion, and he doesn't have to agree with it. And if he doesn't want to wake up and help himself out, that's up to him. Maybe I didn't put that so well, but anyway. He said, I was manipulated masterfully. Okay. So for those of you who may relate to some of this, may not, or you might be going, oh, I was there once, but I've done a lot of work and I'm not there anymore, which I hope is the case for lots of people. You might well relate in a point to when he says, I was manipulated masterfully. Okay, so he was manipulated, whether masterfully or not. But even when that happens to you, or if it's happened to you, if you haven't worked this through yet, here's the sort of like, it's good news when you radically accept it, you get in your own healing recovery journey, or when you've gone through that already. But for people that haven't yet, what he's saying here is, since he was manipulated masterfully, it's all her fault, and he has no responsibility in what happened to him. Now let me nuance that just a little bit more clearly. I'm not saying that anybody in any relationship, excuse me, when anybody with borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder or comorbidity both, whether it's a parent, whether it's a partner, an ex, a friend, a favorite person, a neighbor, whomever in the world, right, that it is. I'm not saying that what they do to you that is abusive, and manipulation can be part of that, right? So yes, we park a lot of that over there. They did this to you. But in his that's not a word, is it? No. In his continued denial and now defense, I'm not a codependent, seems to be the most important thing and mantra on this man's mind, aside from all of the other cognitive dissonance, obsessive ruminating thinking, and going around in the same circle loops that he continues to travel in his mind, etc. Because, I don't know why, that because is simply a poor choice, an unhealthy choice, the easiest choice. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, for people with codependency, the victim's choice. So when I say this, I want to be really parsing this carefully, because I'm not saying you're responsible for what the borderline or the narcissist did to you. No. But you have some responsibility in when you start to figure out what's happening and you stay there. Or in this guy's case, he's not really there anymore, but he isn't moving forward, getting help. He isn't seeing his part. So she just masterfully manipulated him. And yeah, that can happen. And people definitely feel that, and it's awful. But it doesn't mean that you don't have the responsibility to learn what you need to learn, as many people are doing, so that you can take responsibility for your own, albeit probably unconscious choices, without all the information you needed. But even when people get more consciously aware of BPD or NPD, and more consciously aware of their own codependency, which this person just doesn't want to have anything to do with, which is his choice point, his right, but he's not going to get anywhere until maybe he opens that door. So remember, as he puts this, because it's going to come up in near the end of the second comment, I hope I don't take forever here, that as he puts this, he was masterfully manipulated. So in other words, he's inferring, what does that have to do with me? I was just a victim, like, I don't know, she said this, she did that, I didn't understand that, like, come on. It's not anything to do with him, he says, drop that. But, so he's now in not only a codependent denying role and defending, as he said, but he's also in a victim place and apparently not aware of that. That would be his responsibility to do something about. I'm not saying he caused it to himself. And this is a really key thing that keeps a lot of codependents stuck in the minimization of what the cluster B is done to you, in the minimization and denial of codependency and what is your way forward, and in the minimization and denial that you have a part in this. And no, you don't start it. No, you're not responsible for what they do, but you're not going to be able to find yourself again, to reclaim your life, to get back on your feet emotionally and perhaps other ways for people, without facing your part and your responsibility to you in all of this. Which this comment is not doing. As though he said, so manipulated masterfully to the point where she told a story in the beginning of the relationship about having written a book about waking up in different places. Sounds abjectly boring to start with, doesn't it? Remember, he's finding this out in the beginning of the relationship. Hey, okay, so these dogs are a challenge right now because if they're in a crate, they're not exactly totally crate trained. They'd probably be barking, like where the phone's ringing. And leaving them out here is, So anyway, so to the point where in the beginning, she told him about this book that she had written about having, waking up in different places. Okay. Fast forward to the end of the relationship, 5 months later. He hasn't even been in this long, but he's just subsumed in it. That is codependency. 5 months later, she told me that this book was about her waking up in various men's houses. Well, I understand the trauma bond, I understand the codependency, especially when someone's in denial. So this could happen to other people. But do you think that it would have happened to you? I don't know, it's hard for people, right? But I think if a woman found out that a man she was with BPD had a book like that, that's like a screaming red flag for time to go, right? Which isn't easy. And of course, for a man in this situation. So at the same time, so that's a big red flag that should rouse someone's attention, one would hope, right? Even if you don't know they have BPD. Like, if I was younger, if I was single, if I was a whole bunch of different things than what I am, and I was dating somebody and they told me in the beginning or 5 months later that they'd written this book about, bye instantly would be my response. No matter what else they're talking about or how they're manipulating or whatever's happening. So he then says, she talked about family, kids, etc. to meet herself out, to make herself out. He said meet, but anyway, to make herself out to be a very good, sweet person. Well, she trying to make herself out to be a very good, sweet person? Where's his thoughts? Where's his red flag? Not even about you gotta know if they have BPD or not. Where's his thinking about himself? Where are his boundaries? What are his values? See, this matters. You don't even have to know if they have BPD or NPD to first go like, well, a book about waking up at a bunch of different guys' houses, I'm out of here. You know, most people I think. But it's difficult in these types of relationships. So he was believing, in other words, maybe she was trying to lay it down. Ouch. But he was believing, in other words, that she was a very sweet person. Because if you listen to the podcast, there's a comment in there where he talks about my sweet borderline and how he thinks she's so close to recovery and all of this stuff that it turns out there's a twist at the end of the podcast. Yeah, go listen to it or fast forward through it and you'll find out what the twist is. There's a commenter comes back and says I was right about something. After pushing hard against me, now coming back to push hard against me again. It's fascinating stuff. I just hope it helps somebody else. Commenter continues, and she was able to keep that mask on firmly for those first 3 months. Well, they're not really wearing a mask, okay, but call it that if one wants to. But he heard about the book, and then he heard about what the book was about. And now he's going to say, but he was masterfully manipulated, even with that big screaming red flag, whether you know they're cluster B or not. And that, so she was wearing the mask. Okay. And then here comes this thing about always leaving town, as if that matters so centrally to what happened here, and it doesn't. And I said that in the podcast, but he continues to have this cognitively distorted belief because he wants and needs control, and he wants to be right. So it has to be about that he left town. It can't be about that she was never that into him, that she never loved him, that she never attached to him. Yeah, she manipulated him, and yeah, she used him. But if he doesn't get to accepting this, or at least acknowledging it first, to work toward acceptance and healing, This is going to keep going in these circles. Lost my place, sorry. The mask on firmly for the first 3 months. Okay. When I left town, she started talking about body weight issues and seemed a bit down. Hey. Now I learned that basically as soon as I left town, she went back to a boyfriend who was a gay/bisexual man who liked to have sex with women and her together. Can I just say there's no such thing as a gay/bisexual man? Because there are gay men and there are bisexual men, period. And we won't get into the other, people that are, no, let's not. So commenter continues, and she posted, I was going to say pointed, I thought it was pointed, it's posted. I'm silly today. I'm silly often. Anyway, she posted something on a hookup app requesting 1, 2, or more men to join them. She said they were looking for a bull, like that animal, a bull. What they were looking for. Just trying to cover the, AI and the YouTube things. And I don't know what that means, but I'm sure it's a term that's involved in certain kind of hookups, right? We can imagine. We'll leave it at that. Not judging. And maybe he's not a bull-ish type person. So maybe that was painful too. I don't know what this is referring to. And she said she was a degradee. Okay, so that would be like submissive, I guess, and a whole bunch of that stuff. We won't go into that either. I did not know about this posting. I came back from my trip and contacted her and we got back together. Well, that was his responsibility, his second big mistake, and he doesn't have to know at this point whether she has BPD or not. The book alone, unless he didn't know about the book at this point, I'm not sure. And then she introduced me to her grandmother. Okay, that might have seemed nice, but what does it have to do with because, this, yeah. It gets convoluted with these people when you first meet them, right? And if you take meeting their grandmother to mean more than it does, but maybe if you don't have the frame of reference yet, I think you know what I'm saying. So I'm just trying to speed it up a bit here. And we spent almost every day together for a couple months. But he's not a codependent. Because every day together for a couple months is enmeshment, is codependency, whether you're with a borderline, a narcissist, another codependent, or just somebody else who's got some issue, why they want to spend 24/7 with somebody. Because that, too, is not healthy relating. Very much another big red flag of how this commenter, who continues to say he's not a codependent, is a codependent, spending 24/7 for a couple months together with this woman, who he obviously didn't know very well. Then he says there was one weird test in there where she had some kind of fake illness and wanted me to look after her. Well, we don't know. She could have had a fake illness and wanted to be babied or, looked after. Or she could have been really sick. I don't know. And then she went on a trip with friends. That's when she cheated. Looking back, I guess it was clear that I would be leaving town again at that point. See? She cheated. Okay. He was masterfully manipulated, but he knows she cheated. And what's he talking about? That he was leaving town again. So must be my fault. He was helping to masterfully manipulate himself. He still is. I'm just saying, the borderline did whatever they did, but what about comment? What about what you do? And anyone that can relate to that. You need to own your own choices. And no, it's not simple, but when they give you big red flags, you don't need to know they have BPD to go, whoa. But why can't you go, whoa, and get out? Because you're codependent. And many people can relate to this, but because he's codependent and he wasn't paying attention, but now he feels like he was victimized by his own choices. Okay. Then came back, so after he left town. No, wait a minute, I skipped something. So he considers it was a weird test. Was it a test? Wasn't it a test? Don't know. Because his thinking doesn't seem to be, seems really cognitively distorted. And then she went on a trip, okay, with friends, right? And she was clear he'd be leaving town again at that point because he thinks that's just the only reason for all this. It's not. Then she came back like nothing had happened, spent another 2 weeks with me. Your choice to let her spend another 2 weeks with you, commenter. Sleeping with me all the while, and you sleeping with her. Own your responsibility. I don't take it she was forcing you to sleep with her, commenter. And then at the end she said, had to break up with me because all she could do was hookups. Okay. Then 1 week after I got back to the U.S., she got back to the U.S., something about something, her friend, who gives a name here for, she said that her friend had sent that, apparently. Okay, could be a lie for sure, right? Then he says, the commenter says she was crazy. Well, it turns out the person named, the name he uses here, is her bisexual lover. Okay. Why are you still dealing with this? Why are you still up in this? I don't understand. You're regurgitating it, so equals you're reliving it, equals you're obsessed with it, equals with you're ruminating, you're being re-victimized by what you're thinking. Your choice, commenter, at this point. And you continue to say you're not a codependent. Gotcha. And then he said, I thought I could handle this, but it's just too much. That's what happens with people with codependency. They think they can handle almost anything just because you like to make the person happy. You want this person for some reason, right? Or reasons. And no matter what comes your way, you just keep thinking you can handle it because you want it so bad, or the person's so bad. But then he said it was too much. Understandable. Makes my head spin. What is going on? Well, more to the point, commenter, what happened? Because apparently it's in the past tense now, but you're still reliving it, talking about it like what's going on now. And that isn't going to help you to find any relief from this. Where was I? It seems like a lot more than just emotional overload on their behalf. I don't think anybody said it's just emotional overload. It's emotional dysregulation. And again, he's only had 3 months of reading about BPD, but he still seemingly doesn't really understand a whole lot. And he should be reading about or listening about codependency, but no, he's pushing that away still. His choice. And it isn't just emotional overload on their behalf, so I don't know where you read that, commenter. This seemed cold and calculated. Oh, you're going to go to that bigger victim place. I doubt she was that organized, commenter. So it could be cold, definitely. Hey, calculated? Like organized, calculated? I doubt it. Because she wasn't thinking about you at all when she was doing this. See how, you didn't matter to her. You need to, kind of think about that. And that hurts, but you need to accept that to move forward, which means getting into healing and recovery and therapy, not just jumping forward to the next woman that walks by you, because you wouldn't be prepared for that, commenter. So he says it seems cold and calculated. Maybe she's got some NPD in there too. I don't know. And the most honest words this commenter ever says, in 3 comments out of probably 30 at this point, is he doesn't know. But he keeps supposing and working his victim narrative. Aside from that, he was probably victimized by her too. He doesn't know. Then, no, she doesn't have to have NPD in there too. Just because you think that for a moment, because you think she was so cold and calculated. Well, they can seem really cold and calculating. The cold part is true. The calculating, organized part often isn't, because it's sad to say, and I'm sorry, and I have empathy for anyone who's been through this, they don't love you, they don't attach to you, they don't care about you. And yeah, they might make it look like they do, And then you believe that, but unfortunately, that's not true. So that was the one comment where he's defending himself. And that was written about 8 hours ago. And then 2 hours ago, it comes back to my podcast wherein I did 2 hours on all his comments and trying to educate him and others, and hopefully it will help others because it's not helping him, which is, I can't help everybody. So his second comment on my recent podcast, the same thing, right? BPD discard, codependency, peeing into the wind of cognitive dissonance. She said she could only do flings after spending 5 months with me. Talking, family future, healthy lifestyle, etc. at the end of 5 months. Okay, so you didn't know that sooner. That makes sense. That would be devastatingly painful. With a 4-month hiatus in the middle, so a significant amount of time and energy. And of course, these 4-month hiatus things are happening, I believe, because the commenter keeps leaving town and then wanting to come back to this person. There's going to be some things in there if he wants to get on board with realizing his codependency, realizing that yes, he was victimized, he was manipulated, etc., but that he, at least now, if not prior, needs to see that he made choices too, then now he has to work those through. It's not, you can't just throw all the blame on them, most of it, yeah, but not all of it, because you can't heal and recover, move forward if you don't see your part. And please hear me, I'm not saying you did what they did or what they did was okay. And the commenter continues, and she told me this as part of Devalue before I left town again. See, this guy's just stuck and married to a narrative. It makes no sense. Yes, she was finally for once telling the truth in a devaluation, I guess. But that sort of thing is hard to accept after she spent 5 months schooling me on what I needed to do for the long-term relationship she desperately wanted. So now we have a person still denying his codependency, saying they're master manipulators. It's all their fault, in other words. I mean, a big chunk of it is. But people who've been hoodwinked, manipulated, hurt by, really negatively impacted by all that they do, you still have a part in it, and I'm not saying you're responsible for what they did at all. So, which is kind of, he's trying to say, like, I didn't know, so like it's all her fault. And when you don't know, yeah, you can't take responsibility for the choices you're making because you're not making them on all the facts. But the other thing is, some things are so astoundingly red flags about why you shouldn't be in a relationship with somebody, even if they don't have BPD. So there's that part in this commenter's experience as well. So that sort of thing is hard to accept after she spent 5 months schooling me. He was being schooled by her, but he doesn't think he's a codependent. What do you think? And then he says, for the relationship she desperately wanted, as if he didn't want it, as if he wasn't making choices to be schooled and to work toward what she was talking about, that yeah, he was manipulated about, but he was believing in, and he was wanting. But he's making it sound like she made him want it all, and he didn't have any choice, albeit he didn't have all the facts at the time, though. And he goes, yes, it's classic BPD, but it was new to me. I understand that, commenter. But now it's not, and you're still quadrupling 10 times, 15, 20, ad infinitum times, doubling down on your whole thought loop circles that aren't, like you said, what's going on? It's not what's going on, it's what happened. But you seem to still be very much in the present with it. That's not going to help you out. It's going to cause you a lot more rumination, obsession, feeling more like a victim because you're not getting to your choice points in retrospect that you can look back at. So you can work that through. She never told me about the BPD. Many don't, or many don't even know. And that's not, I'm not excusing that. She said she was depressed. Well, sometimes with depression, or they say they have CPTSD, or they say they have other things, you have to kind of pay attention to what's happening to you and to how you feel, Because therein lies your responsibility to take action for yourself. But you're just blaming her. She's responsible for a lot. Yeah, it hurt you. But what are you going to do about it now? Because it's up to you now, not her. To say that those are fooled by this level of manipulation with a personality disorder behind it, wouldn't really say that the manipulation has a personality disorder behind it. The manipulation arises because of the maladaptive defenses, maladaptive coping mechanisms, lack of coping skills, unknown self, lack of identity. And so the personality disorder drives, firstly, everything about the manipulation, secondly. Not that that matters a whole lot when you've been hurt. So, yeah, okay. I got to read the whole thing again. I mean, not the whole thing. To say that those are fooled by this level of manipulation with a personality disorder behind it are codependent is overstating it and reversing the responsibility of the damage. Oh, no, commenter, it absolutely is not. You are understating it, minimizing it, maximizing what she did, minimizing to a totally not even talking about ignoring your codependency that you still deny, and you think somehow that's me reversing it on you. No, it's not. There's two things happening there. And then the commenter says, I'm overstating, or it's overstating, or everybody that talks about this is overstating, that people with codependency have their own part. So I'm not saying it has anything to do with what the borderline or the narcissist does to you, but you're not going to be able to heal and move forward and get out of the rumination and the pain and like this guy's circular thought loops that he can't break at all right now because he's still in denial. So he says, to say that people who get in these situations are codependent is overstating it and reversing the responsibility of the damage. No, it's not at all, is all I can say. And this commenter is perpetuating his ongoing re-experiencing of the damage that the borderline did, he didn't do, because he can't stop denying he's a codependent. And he said, what's going on? So he's still in the here and now with what's now past, albeit still painful, and he needs to work it through. But he's trying to say he's just a victim. It had nothing to do with him. She made him do everything. And yeah, I'm overstating it, and I'm reversing, apparently, the responsibility of the damage. No, I'm not. The responsibility of the damage is primarily and firstly and foremostly with the person with BPD. Yes, they manipulate, they lie, all of which is through survival, but we can't excuse it. So first that happens, you're right, commenter, and I'm not reversing that. But along with that, you, whether you ever see yourself as a codependent or not, you have responsibility for the choices that you made. Some that you made because you didn't know what was going on. Some that you made without all the facts, for sure. But you still have to be accountable to you for your choices, allowing for the fact that, yes, she abused you, without a doubt. I'm not reversing the responsibility for the damage. But you right now are continuing to take the damage that she did to you and perpetuate it forward. Because you keep going in the same circles. You said in a comment, which is covered in the podcast, that you said I was right. And it's not about me needing to be right. It's about, I just wish that you, commenter, and anybody else who might relate or, think that they're not codependent and it's all the borderline's fault. Most of it is. Most of it is what they do that hurts people. Misrepresent, they don't even know who they are, but they misrepresent, they give you a picture and it's not the truth. But you still, at the end of the day, have to look at what was your part. How did you get there? Why? People don't understand BPD or NPD until they get to that. But the point is, there's something in your past, that's where the codependency comes in, commenter, that there's something there that you need to know more about yourself so this doesn't happen to you all over again. And I'm not saying it's your fault. It's not. But now that you're elongating your pain by continuing these loops and the pushback about you're not a codependent, You can do that till, hell freezes over. That's your business. I'm not here trying to change your mind, not telling you what to do or think, just suggesting what would really help you. And if you want to keep rebuffing it, you don't need to keep making comments about it, because I won't be responding to any more of them, commenter. I'm trying to give you something that would be very helpful, but apparently you don't find it that way. So maybe you should move on to another YouTube channel and bury it in all your looping thought story and your experience, which I understand you were abused, and see if you get any help with somebody else, because most people don't even answer these kind of comments. And then he says, we should inform people about borderlines in high school. Okay, firstly, that would be interesting enough by itself, right? But in high school, in sex ed, as if everything to do with borderline personality disorder just has to do with the sex. And commenter and anyone that can relate in part, or you're still in denial, or you're just all over the map and you can't accept anything yet, and you might hear me thinking I'm blaming you too. I'm not. I'm talking about your part, and more your part in what are you gonna do now, right? And this commenter, what he's gonna do now is clear. He's gonna go round and around and around the same cycles. So I'm gonna stop engaging him because it's not healthy for me to engage him anymore. But for him or for me, but I continue to think that it might help other people. And sometimes it helps people who are moving forward and working with a therapist, but they look back. They'll hear something I say and they'll be like, oh yeah, that's what it was when I was going through that. So it can help in retrospect as well, depending where people are at. So, but we should inform people about borderlines in school, in sex ed. Well, perhaps in school, in sex ed, we should also inform codependents about how much they're going to have a voracious hunger to be seen and heard, and in a way idealized because of childhood woundedness, which is unconscious, and how much you're going to need to know about, your sex ed, because they're going to show you, apparently, I think some male borderlines do this to women too. They're going to show you a whole lot of wonderful in the beginning that isn't true. And the physical relation part is so hugely important, and I'm not judging that, but that is what hooks you. It's what hooks some women, but it hooks a lot of men. And I don't say that to be demeaning towards men or judgmental towards men. Men are men, and each man isn't the same. All men aren't the same, but men and their sex drives must be respected. And then these females, of course they know how to play you. Of course they do. And of course they reel you in with that, and then they use it as a weapon. And even if a relationship lasts a little longer than this commenter's, they're going to discard you, push you out, whatever the case. They're going to shut the spigot off, period. But you don't know that going into it, right? So one thing I can say is when it feels too good to be true, you need to kind of heed that, because there's really no such thing as a free lunch. There'll be some obligation. There's just no free lunches. There's just no, hey, this is the greatest thing. And I'm sure it is for lots of people, but it's too good to be true. That's what healthier individuals without codependency back up and go, whoa, what's with this chick? And they leave, even if they've already slept with them and experienced that nirvana that so many, I believe, and people describe. So the thing is, I sound like I've had no experience myself, but let's not go there. Anyway, the thing is that if we were going to teach one thing in school, we'd have to teach other people about codependency, how the whole psychology of how's your childhood going, things that really aren't going to ever happen in school, unfortunately. And the other thing I just want to reiterate is it's not only women with BPD. And not all women with BPD are 10s or 15s on your scale of 1 to 10. Lots apparently are. But not all women are. And not all women with BPD are hypersexual. Some go the other way and they're like asexual. They just don't want to get involved with that. So I just want to kind of balance out the scales about that. And the only other thing I can say to this commenter and anyone else who might be identifying with this commenter's denial of codependency, or I am not a codependent, as he continues to say, well, I don't have the right to insist that he is one. I don't know him. But everything that he shared and all the comments, the situation, which was out of his control, which he did get manipulated in, but he has to realize that, I mean, hopefully one day he'll realize he does have codependency. It's not a horrible word. Doesn't mean it's something like you're a horribly broken person. But you can't be a healthier individual, of which there are fewer in the world, right, that start off in life and their families work. That's less families now than ever before, unfortunately. And they get securely attached in childhood, and they grow up with esteem and boundaries and all kinds of wonderful things that some of us never knew in childhood and would have to learn through some hard lessons over the years in life to then get into therapy and like deal with like after a BPD breakup, etc. And this commenter just doesn't seem willing to look at what's going on for him. What was happening for him then? Because all he can do is focus on because he left town. Because he left town twice. And now he's going to be living in a town. So what does that mean about his thinking? His cognitive distorted thinking. That he just thought because he came back, she should run to him. That maybe if she was really not, if she was the person he thought she was in the beginning, that would be what happens. But then also on the other side, this commenter thinks that it was just his leaving town those 2 times. He didn't know she had BPD. Yeah, of course she probably felt abandonment and whatnot. But his leaving town, because he's a codependent in denial, I'm still going to say that, he can't fathom that wasn't the be-all to end-all of why he got discarded, etc. When I want to say one more time, like I said in that lengthy podcast, this is but one little small piece of what was going on with his ex. That he left town twice. She had all this other stuff going on, right? She can only do flings, not relationships. She likes to do all this kinky stuff, which I'm sure lots of people would like to do with these women who have BPD and before you get into all of like what really hurts and you're losing yourself, etc. Maybe a lot of that is wonderful. I'm not into kink stuff. I've never, maybe TMI, but I understand it from a psychological perspective. Worked with a lot of clients who've been involved in various aspects of things like, BDSM, etc. and more. But my view on that is that largely activities of asexual nature involving those kind of areas of worlds and experience, maybe not every single case, but predominantly the majority, it is reenactment of childhood trauma, whether one has BPD, NPD, codependency and or complex post-traumatic stress disorder. And by the way, I want to reiterate again, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, unlike what all the narcissistic YouTubers and others say, does not result from being in a relationship with a narcissist or a borderline. It's onset in childhood, as is codependency, or maybe codependency can be onset at 8 or 9 or 10 or in your teen years. But the point is, you don't just acquire this type of trauma response, well, I shouldn't say simply, but only from an adult relationship with a borderline or narcissist. It's already there. And a lot of people have codependency, maybe not severely, but it is maybe laying dormant. I've had a lot of clients say, well, but I've had 2-3 other relationships in my life and they weren't like this, and I did. Well, yeah, so then the codependency lays dormant, it doesn't get triggered because it gets triggered by the borderline or the narcissist. So this commenter is going to have to, hey, no rough stuff. My little dog's a little histrionic. He's a little sensitive. He got real pampered by the breeder. Of course, he gets pampered by me too, but I'm trying to back off the pamper because, Anyway, I've said this to a degree before in other videos, and so I want to be very careful again to just reiterate that the commenter is describing being with somebody with BPD who wasn't who we thought they were. They misrepresented themselves. They always do because they don't know who the heck they are. But we're not excusing that. He was traumatized by that. He was hurt by that. But he continues to think it's only because he left town twice. So now he continues probably to think, now I'm back in town. What's the problem? Why can't... Maybe now he understands BPD is starting to put that together. But the bottom line is, if you continue to minimize or deny the codependency, what that is, because we know now, all the patterns fit, all the dots connect in one way or another, individually in different ways for people. If he continues to deny the codependency, don't do that. And he continues to tell the same story over and over again, and then he continues to say, well, she did all this to me, master manipulator, I think she's a narc now. Not appropriate, really silly, not helpful for him. And then the question in the first comment that he shared on the podcast thing, comment space there, the first thing he says is he has to defend himself. I'm not a codependent. She masterfully manipulated me, and that I am reversing, I guess, the cause of who does the damage, and that in saying that people are codependent. So he thinks this just happened because he left town twice, and now he's going to be in her town, so why isn't she just maybe he's starting to understand, but why isn't she just coming back? Commenter, you need to understand she never gave a rat's behind about you. I'm sorry, that's just the truth. She never loved you, she never cared about you, the family talked, people with BPD there's a multitude of reasons why this happens. It's not acceptable. But when they are going through all this stuff, not every single one of them is doing it calculatingly or even consciously with conscious awareness, and it doesn't make it okay. And not every single one of them is talking about family and the future in the house because they're wearing a fake mask and they don't partially really desire those things, though they're never really going to attain those things in any lasting way, the way they treat people. So there's all what they do, the cluster Bs, and definitely they abuse and traumatize and victimize. But then there's the codependency and or CPTSD that people have. After you've gone through that experience, you then need to get into therapy to understand more what I'm saying, as I'm trying to parse it as carefully as I can here, and this is going to be a really long one too. You need to understand that you have a role in the situation. Now, that doesn't mean you're responsible for the woundedness or damage done to you. No, you're not. But you're responsible for what you're going to do about it now. How are you going to stop your narrative, like your obsession, your ruminating, the cognitive dissonance of going in the same circles like this commenter is, and if you're denying codependency, or you're letting anything like that block you from getting into therapy to get help, you are now contributing more damage to yourself at this point in time than otherwise you would be going through. And I'm not saying then the person with BPD did to you. No. So this person's tacit continued denial and his continued trying to turn things around on I got it wrong and I'm reversing who's responsible for the damage. Not at all. But he's still asking present tense questions about a past situation. It's his hellhole now. I had empathy for him. I'm not sure how much empathy I have now because he just keeps pushing back and doesn't want to hear what can help. And he has the right to do that. Except for no more on this channel, buddy. Because I've said everything I can possibly say about your comments. And not just for you, but for you. And you don't want it. You keep throwing it back at me. Okay. But I'm hoping it's going to help other people. And even in retrospect, sometimes it's just a piece falls together here and there. Something I say, something somebody else says for people in their overall process. Make no mistake about it. You've been with a borderline. You've been with a narcissist. No matter what they did. And what they did matters. And they did it. And they're responsible for it. Now, you are responsible for you. You are responsible for picking yourself up, getting into therapy, and to work towards stop focusing on that person. Because you're still losing yourself. Now you've introjected the damage they've done to you, and you're doing it to yourself. And that intersects with codependency and or CPTSD from people's childhoods, because you interject something from the borderline or narcissistic abuser and liar and ghoster and discarder. Okay, but you also have things in there from childhood already, very different, for different people. that you introjected in childhood, that now this is totally triggering and pummeling on that. So you see how important it is that he doesn't continue to deny the codependency, or, at least that he needs to get into therapy to explore what is his part now. Because he's introjected all this from whatever happened in his childhood. He's introjected what happened with this woman, right? And now he's doing it to himself. That's what happens to people. The internal critic is inflamed. He probably isn't aware that he has some woundedness in childhood and a wounded inner child. So if he keeps on this narrative, what he doesn't understand, and what I want you to so clearly understand if he never gets it, is that this is how people who've been with a borderline or a narcissist are not responsible for what they did to you. But this is how you got to step up and learn how to be responsible for your part, even when you didn't know what the hell was going on. So you can move forward and get into therapy and heal. So I'm not blaming you for what they did to you. But people with codependency and or CPTSD, you might have gone through horrible damage with the borderline and the narcissist, and that's their responsibility. But you have a responsibility to take care of yourself, at least now. If not, you couldn't before. And then you have to look at how did you get there. Some of the most important work I do with clients, I'm out here to work with you, by the way, if you resonate with me. Some of the most important work I do with clients, aside from all of the obvious and the whole process to heal and recover from these relationships, but people need not only how to go no contact, how to stop ruminating, the cognitive dissonance, how to break the trauma bond, which is all really important and difficult and painful, but also how are you going to understand, because you need to, how you got there. So that's a big part, along with all the other healing, to make sure that you never get there with the next cluster B around the corner. Because this is an exponentially exploding epidemic in our world today, on the macrocosm scale, which I won't say more about right here, but individually, in people's families, in the fact that we're in a postmodern, deconstructivist era, which if you just look at the world news, it's a very, very stressful time, somewhat exciting at the same time, maybe I could say, to be alive. But it's not easy. And so what you go through with a borderline or a narcissist of any relationship type, by the way, in your interpersonal relationship or relationships of different types, you might be the child of a borderline or a narcissist, and now you've been with a borderline or a narcissist partner. These things are related. You don't do it on purpose. But the point is, this is why it's so important that you have to get help so you can stop increasing or doubling down, re-experiencing, which is now your responsibility, the damage, the initial damage that was the cluster B's responsibility, because you've introjected something that lays on top of a childhood introject of taking on something, being wounded, being hurt, and then some, like you've been with the cluster B who's a partner or an ex now. And if you don't do that work, then you're going to remain sitting in sort of the victim pot. And yes, you've been victimized. But the idea is to survive the BPD or NPD relationship breakup. The idea is to get to know you better and to know what happened in your childhood. And again, I want to just emphasize, when I work with clients, a big part of this process is, hey, don't eat my books. Hey, big part of this process is, amongst all the moving pieces of recovery, learning how you got there. I help people figure that out every day. Have been doing it for 35 years. And it doesn't bother me, really, that, I feel like I wish I could reach the guy, but like I've tried, and, there I have to leave it, right? And have a boundary. But it doesn't bother me that he continues to push back. But of course, I have to have a boundary, and I've reached a limit. And I've been a good sport, to continue to explain and try to help this individual. But I'm not just trying to help the individual, trying to help more people with, obviously, what I'm saying here. So, sorry this went so long. And just to conclude, I want to say that how many people out there denying codependency, like this commenter, saying, well, it's not my fault, she did it all to me. Okay, well, that part isn't your fault. But what is your responsibility now is you're still reliving it like it's happening now instead of it's in your past, albeit maybe not that far long ago. But if you don't start to recognize what's happening to you now, that now has nothing to do with her, you're adding to your own pain and suffering. You're looping what happened from her, but you're looping it now, you've interjected it, now your internal critic is inflamed, and you are your own worst enemy on top of what the cluster B did to you. Think about it, because these dots connect, and I don't spend my time explaining this all the time because I don't know what I'm talking about. And I understand people's denial. There's a multitude of points of denial that people go through after these relationships. And it's really tough stuff. Anything that involves a trauma bond, like Stockholm Syndrome, like intermittent reinforcement that feels like you're addicted to it, etc. Because it's not really a straight up addiction, but hormonally speaking, and in that realm of physical relations, etc., there can be some, the chemicals in our systems, neurotransmitters, hormones, etc., that can make for a somewhat of an addictive experience. Then there are people who have love addiction. Then there are people who have sex addiction on top of this, much more complicated. And then there are people also with limerence. And it's not the same for everyone. But if you think that you know that you have a sex addiction and or love addiction or relationship addiction and codependency and or CPTSD, and perhaps you've been with more than one cluster B partner in your life, you really, really do have a responsibility to yourself to get into therapy. I'm here to work with you, but I resonate with you, because otherwise your suffering is going to keep going, and you're obviously going to keep blaming them, and they obviously play the role they play, don't they, in wounding you. But if you keep letting them wound you, especially after you know what it is, now you're volunteering for it. And I don't say that to be judgmental or harsh. So I hope this was helpful to somebody, because dare I say, the commenters is probably going to comment and push back at me harder. I don't think it's going to be helpful for the commenter. And, well, that's up to him. Anyway, sorry it went so long. It wasn't really supposed to, but I guess this commenter has just said so much that I feel like it would be, I was trying to help the commenter too, but he obviously doesn't want my help. He doesn't agree with me. He said I got it all right at one point, but then he continues to say, maybe it's just your negative opinion, blah, 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 blah. You're reversing everything. Well, dude, you can come at me all day long, but all you're doing is probably doing some transference of your ex onto me. I'm here to help. I'm not here to wound. And I say things sometimes bluntly. I've heard a lot about that from clients. But clients say, oh, I heard you say whatever it was. I didn't like it. I got pissed, but it woke me up. And I'm here now because I want to heal. And I want to feel better. And I want to stop hurting. And I want the rest of my life. And younger, I work mostly with men, but women, I work with women as well. And younger men come along and say, I want to find a woman that I can, know is grounded and I want a healthy relationship. I want to fix myself. I want to have a family. And trust me, nobody wants to have a child with a undiagnosed or untreated borderline or narcissistic woman. You just don't. And women don't want to have a child with an untreated or undiagnosed borderline or narcissistic man. It happens all the time, and guess how we end up with the next generation of growing exponentially people with BPD and NPD? The trauma, the woundedness, the intergenerational trauma. So after it's all said and done, what they do that they're responsible for, and they so hurt you in so many ways, I understand that, you have to look at your part, and not in how they abused you, how you got there, because it's not your fault, but how did you get there? How can you stop yourself from ending up with another one? How can you stop yourself going back with the one that you might still want back? Because you need to know what's going on in your unconscious and the woundedness from your childhood and how it's the interplay. Because often, I'll just say the most obvious thing. Often people have a borderline or narcissistic parent with the other parent being exceedingly codependent, or like in my case, I had 2 cluster B parents that were both alcoholics. And so we're going to inevitably end up in relationships with people just like the parents. And about a nickel for every time a client said, as they realize, oh my God, I'm married. It doesn't matter if you're a man and you say, because you're relating to women, if you're a heterosexual man, you go, oh my God, I married my mother. And of course, nobody means that literally or like, anything to do with physical relations wise. But because what's in us, right? The woundedness and the damage is still in a lot of people, and you're not aware of this. It's not conscious until, unfortunately, you get hurt so badly that you got to go like, what's going on here? And then you got to try to figure it out and then get in therapy to heal it. Because nobody signs up for this on purpose. Well, some people do. But they're mostly narcissists with borderlines or borderlines with narcissists or psychopaths. But they don't know what they're signing up for because even they are in repetition compulsion cycles that they're not consciously aware of, as are people with codependency and CPTSD in a different way, not the same repetition compulsion cycles. What am I talking about with that? It's things that keep being reenacted and reenacted from an unconscious place of first woundedness, or origin of woundedness, which is usually in childhood, and then accruing maybe woundedness throughout a series of relationships in adulthood. And the point is, could be a neighbor, could be a landlord, could be a boss, doesn't always have to be a significant other only. But the thing is, what's inside and unaddressed and unknown and not brought to your conscious awareness, what you don't try to work on and heal in therapy, it's going to, so what you resist, and to this commenter, you keep denying your codependency, what you resist will persist. And then like this commenter is going to keep blaming, yes, initially he was traumatized by that borderline, but now he's re-traumatizing himself and she's gone. And he still can't understand that it has way more to do with everything, all kinds of other things, and just that he left town twice. And that she did this all in a calculated way. So often they're not borderlines less calculated than narcissists. Not all narcissists are calculating, many are. But the point is, lots of people with BPD could look calculating, but they don't really even have the executive function, most of them, to untreated, to be able to actually mastermind this grand plan that you find to be one of the most traumatic experiences of your life. So remember, you do have a part. That part isn't in what they did to you. The part is in, okay, now what are you going to do? And for people still in relationships, knowing with a borderline or narcissist, but you think you can hack it, the good is so good, you don't care about the bad, you're abandoning yourself, you're getting wounded beyond what you're probably aware of, you're going to lose yourself if you haven't lost yourself. Nobody can really hack this. The only people that can hack this kind of stuff, untreated borderlines with the narcissists, malignant narcissists who prey on the borderlines, psychopaths and narcissists, psychopaths, narcissists, and borderlines. Because outside, and borderlines don't fare so well in those relationships, by the way. They end up usually getting crushed. Because unlike what a lot of other people will say, the borderline defeats the narcissist. And say, no, they don't. Then we wouldn't be talking about a borderline in the case of women, where still we don't see psychopathy diagnosed straight up the way it should be in some women. No, they still put them through the BPD trap door because of the hegemony with Big Pharma with the APA. But do you know that not everything about mental health, not everything about these relationships, not everything you know and need to heal, not the way that I work with clients. I work in a holistic way. I'll answer questions all day long. I'm like a walking encyclopedia about all of this stuff clinically. What it is, why BPD isn't NPD, what motivates them, why do they do what they do, which it helps to learn that eventually as you're healing, but it's not as important when you're going through the trauma, because knowing that isn't going to stop the dynamic, the trauma bond, the intermittent reinforcement, the Stockholm syndrome, and all of that horrible stuff, painful stuff. But like I often hear men say, and I do understand this to a point. I don't know what they're ripping apart now. Hey! Oh well. Men will say, she seduced me. So there's some truth, and a woman might feel seduced by a borderline man or a narcissistic man. So there's some truth to that. But what I want you to look beyond, especially now when you need to take responsibility for going forward, healing, getting into therapy, what are you going to do now? And getting away from them if you're not away from them, and going no contact, and not keep seeking to recycle this, because it's what's inside. What you resist is persisting. You're going to keep getting the same results. And what is it they say that insanity is? You keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. That's what people in relationship recycling with borderlines and narcissists are doing. You're not going to defy the odds. You're not going to be the special one. You're not going to be able to have the desired result you want. You're going to lose yourself, maybe even your life in the process. And you are way more important and a precious human being, and you don't deserve to hand over to lose your life, to be damaged beyond repair if you keep doing it because of these people. So remember, taking ownership and responsibility for yourself going forward is a crucial part of getting out of the trauma bond and moving forward. Take care.